Shocking. Eala threw her racket into the crowd after her loss. Fans went wild fighting for it. The 39-minute defeat was heartbreaking enough. But what happened next? A moment of pure chaos that left thousands of Filipino fans scrambling, diving, and fighting over a piece of tennis history that nobody expected to receive. The stage was set for a fairy tale. What unfolded was a nightmare that lasted just 39 minutes. August 25, 2026. Louis Armstrong Stadium, Flushing Meadows, New York, the 10 a.m. Start time was unusually early for a U.S. Open match. So early that even Elina Svitolina would later joke she hadn't played at that hour since she was under 12. But the crowd didn't care. Thousands of Filipino fans had packed the stands, their Philippine flags transforming the New York venue into a sea of red, blue, yellow, and white. The chants of, "Let's go, Alex!" echoed through the stadium before the first serve was even struck. This was supposed to be the beginning of something magical. Eala, the 21-year-old Filipina sensation, who had climbed to a career-high world number 18 ranking and was projected to earn her highest Grand Slam seeding ever, was making her mixed doubles debut. She was partnering with Felix Auger-Aliassime, the Canadian world number 4 who had been dreaming of this moment for weeks. "It's a great opportunity," Auger-Aliassime had said, "to feel what it's like to have the Eala effect and fan base behind me. It's kind of funny because she's younger than me, but I feel like she has the fan base and she's carrying the crowd." But standing across the net was a different kind of partnership. The husband and wife tandem of Elina Svitolina, world no. 9 from Ukraine, and Gael Monfils, the French showman playing his final U.S. Open before retirement. Married since 2021, this was their first time playing together in a major tournament. And they had something the young duo couldn't match: chemistry that went far beyond the tennis court. The match began with promise. Eala and Auger-Aliassime won the opening game, with Auger-Aliassime closing it out with an ace. For a brief moment, the dream was alive. The crowd roared, the flags waved. And then, it all fell apart. Svitolina and Monfils won the next 4 games to take the first set 4-1. The second set started with Eala's team holding serve to make it 1-1, but once again, the married couple took control, winning 3 straight games to seal the match. Auger-Aliassime committed a double fault in the final game of the first set, and communication between the young partners seemed to break down. The final score, 4-1, 4-1. The duration, just 39 minutes. Svitolina and Monfils sealed their victory with a kiss. For Eala and Auger-Aliassime, the dream was over almost before it had begun. The Filipina-Canadian team won 23 points, while their opponents won 34. They committed 8 unforced errors, compared with just 1 by Svitolina and Monfils. But the loss wasn't just about tennis. It was about something far bigger. Thousands of Filipino fans had traveled across the United States, some saving for months, just to see their hero compete. They had transformed Louis Armstrong Stadium into a home away from home, and in 39 minutes, their hopes were dashed. The crowd fell silent. The flags stopped waving, and the Eala effect that had taken New York by storm suddenly felt like a distant memory. As Svitolina and Monfils celebrated, the young Filipina walked off the court, her first Grand Slam mixed doubles experience ending in disappointment. The Filipina-Canadian pair each collected $20,000 for reaching the first round, but the money meant nothing in the face of such a crushing defeat. The loss was painful. But what happened next? A moment of pure chaos that left thousands of Filipino fans scrambling, diving, and fighting over a piece of tennis history that nobody expected to receive. The match was over in 39 minutes, but the image that would define it came in the final moment. As the last ball bounced out of play, a backhand from Felix Auger-Aliassime that found the net. Elina Svitolina and Gael Monfils turned to each other. The Ukrainian world no. 9 and the French showman, married since 2021, sealed their victory with a kiss. It was their first competitive mixed doubles match together, and they had just delivered a masterclass in chemistry that their young opponents simply couldn't match.
Happy wife, happy life.
Monfils had joked after a previous victory, his words capturing the playful dynamic that defines their partnership. But the kiss was more than just a celebration. It was a symbol of everything the young duo of Eala and Felix Auger-Aliassime lacked. The seamless communication, the natural chemistry, the partnership that extends far beyond the tennis court. The Filipina-Canadian team won 23 points, while their opponents won 34. They committed 8 unforced errors, compared with just 1 by Svitolina and Monfils. The statistics painted a clear picture. Eala and Auger-Aliassime had 3 aces and 9 winners, but the unforced errors proved costly. The married duo won all 7 of their first serve points. It was a masterclass in efficiency against a partnership that was still finding its rhythm. For Svitolina, the victory carried deeper significance. It was her first win over Eala after the Filipina had triumphed in their 2 previous WTA Tour singles encounters, at the Berlin Tennis Open and the Washington Open earlier in the year. The Ukrainian star had been embarrassed by the 21-year-old Filipina in those matches. This victory was sweet redemption.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Fun format and so many people, Svitolina said in the post-match interview, laughing at the early start time. 10 a.m., I think, is one of the earliest we've ever played since under 12. She continued. First of all, very happy to play finally with Gael. It's nice to share the court together. Just super happy with the win. We were trying to be really focused, but also to have fun. That was the key today. Monfils, the 39-year-old French showman playing his final U.S. Open before retirement, echoed his wife's sentiments. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, he told the crowd. It's a fun format. I really enjoyed the first time playing with my wife. I had massive pressure on my back, but I feel like I handled it good. It's different. We played, we won, so now let's see for the next one. The kiss wasn't just a celebration. It was a moment that reminded everyone watching why the Eala effect, as powerful as it was, couldn't overcome the chemistry of a married couple who had been playing together for years. But what happened next as Eala walked off the court would leave the thousands of Filipino fans in attendance absolutely stunned. The match was over, the kiss had been sealed. And Eala had just experienced her first Grand Slam mixed doubles defeat. But what she did next stunned the thousands of fans who had packed Louis Armstrong Stadium. As the 21-year-old Filipina walked off the court, her Babolat Pure Aero racket still in her hand, the same racket she had used to carve out her historic Wimbledon run, she paused at the baseline. Her eyes scanned the sea of Philippine flags that had transformed the stadium into a celebration of Filipino pride. And then, in a gesture that nobody expected, she hurled the racket into the crowd. The chaos began instantly. Fans scrambled, diving over seats and each other in a desperate bid to claim the piece of tennis history that had just been tossed into their midst. Security guards rushed toward the commotion, but it was too late. The racket had become a trophy, a symbol of a moment that would be remembered long after the 39-minute match had faded from memory. But here's what makes this moment truly remarkable. Eala has always been known for her composure. She is so grounded for her age. As Billie Jean King observed after their meeting at Wimbledon, she has such gratitude, already at a young age. The Filipina superstar who once admitted she gets tongue-tied around Rafael Nadal is not known for emotional outbursts. But this was different. This wasn't just any defeat, this was a loss that cut deep. I needed to push a lot, Eala had admitted after a grueling match in Toronto. I'm as tired as one can be at this stage. You can imagine, a lot of matches. By mid-August, she had played 56 matches across 21 tournaments, more than any other player on the WTA Tour. The relentless schedule had left her drained physically, mentally, and emotionally. And now, her mixed doubles debut had ended in 39 minutes. The Filipina-Canadian team won just 23 points to their opponent's 34. They committed 8 unforced errors, compared with just 1 by Svitolina and Monfils. For a player who had achieved so much this year, winning her first WTA title in Washington, reaching the Wimbledon round of 16, climbing to number 18 in the world, the loss was a bitter pill to swallow. The racket toss wasn't frustration, it was release. It was a moment of raw emotion from a young woman who had been carrying the hopes of 110 million Filipinos. $1 billion sponsorship empire, and the weight of an entire nation's expectations. The fans who had traveled thousands of miles to support her understood. They didn't see it as disrespect. They saw it as an expression of the passion that had made her their hero. And they wanted a piece of it. Fans were still scrambling over each other to grab the racket that had been in the hands of the Filipina sensation. The moment had shocked the crowd, but it also deepened their connection to a player who had just shown them that she was human. The Eala effect had taken on a new dimension. It was no longer just about victory. It was about vulnerability, and the fans loved her even more for it. The moment Eala tossed her Babolat Pure Aero racket into the stands, time seemed to stand still for just a split second. Then chaos erupted. A piece of tennis history had just fallen from the sky. And the thousands of fans packed into Louis Armstrong Stadium knew exactly what they were fighting for. The Babolat Pure Aero Gen 9 is the same model used by Rafael Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz, a racket that retails for around $299 and is designed for explosive, spins-heavy play. But this wasn't just any racket. This was the racket that had been in the hands of the Filipina sensation, who had defeated Iga Swiatek on center court at Wimbledon, become the first Filipino to reach the second week of a Grand Slam, and climb to a career high no. 18 in the world. This was a piece of history, and everyone wanted it. The scramble was immediate and intense. Fans dove over seats, reaching desperately for the precious prize. Security guards rushed toward the commotion, but they were too late. The racket had become a trophy, a symbol of a moment that would be remembered long after the 39-minute match had faded from memory. But here's what makes this moment truly remarkable. That racket represented something far more than just a piece of equipment. When one player can move ticket demand, mobilize diaspora communities, and create noticeably different atmospheres in international tournaments, the Daily Tribune observed, organizers pay attention. So do sponsors, so does television. And sooner or later, so does the entire sport. Eala's popularity had become so significant that it was even benefiting Jessica Pegula's podcast, The Player's Box, which gained 4,000 to 5,000 new subscribers after Pegula faced Eala in the DC Open final. Filipino fans are insane, Pegula said, referring to the surge in listeners. It's pretty cool. I think it's really neat that it's crossed over. Even Coco Gauff had acknowledged the Eala effect, saying, I think the demographic that Alex is bringing to the sport of tennis is so important. I think all of us should really embrace that because we're all benefiting from it. Gauff, who has faced Eala twice, added, just to see a nation of people who maybe don't always feel represented in this sport finally see themselves out there, I think it's incredibly inspiring. The racket toss wasn't frustration. It was release. It was a moment of raw emotion from a young woman who had been carrying the hopes of 110 million Filipinos, $1 billion sponsorship empire, and the weight of an entire nation's expectations. The fans who had traveled thousands of miles to support her understood. They didn't see it as disrespect. They saw it as an expression of the passion that had made her their hero. And they wanted a piece of it. Fans were still scrambling over each other to grab the racket that had been in the hands of the Filipina sensation. The moment had shocked the crowd, but it also deepened their connection to a player who had just shown them that she was human. The Eala effect had taken on a new dimension. It was no longer just about victory. It was about vulnerability, and the fans loved her even more for it. The racket had been thrown, the fans had scrambled, the chaos had erupted. And now, as the dust settled over Louis Armstrong Stadium, Eala stood at the center of a moment that would define her U.S. Open journey. Not because of the loss, but because of what happened next. Because this is what makes the Eala effect so powerful. When the racket sailed into the crowd, it wasn't just a piece of equipment being discarded. It was a moment of raw, unfiltered humanity from a young woman who had been carrying the weight of 110 million Filipinos on her shoulders. Billie Jean King, the tennis icon whose name adorns the very facility where history was unfolding, had observed earlier, "She's so grounded for her age, and she's so thankful she has such gratitude, already at a young age." But even the most grounded stars break sometimes. And in that moment, thousands of fans saw something they had never seen before. The vulnerability behind the champion. But here's the truth about champions. They don't stay down for long. 1 year ago today, Eala claimed Doris' US Open debut win. The headlines would read just hours before her mixed doubles match. On August 25, 2025, a then no. 70 Eala had mounted an epic comeback to stun world number 14 Clara Tauson 6-3, 2-6, 7-6 in the US Open first round at the Grandstand Court in New York. She came back from 1-5 down in the third set to become the first Philippine player to win a singles main draw match at a Grand Slam in the Open era. A crowd of boisterous Filipino fans had witnessed history that day. 1 year later, the same crowd was packing Louis Armstrong Stadium, but the result was different. Eala, now ranked no. 18 in the world, and her Canadian partner Felix Auger-Aliassime, the world number 4, had fallen to the husband-wife tandem of Gael Monfils and Elina Svitolina in a crushing 1-4, 1-4 defeat. The match lasted just 39 minutes. The Filipina Canadian team committed 8 unforced errors compared with 1 by their opponents. They won 23 points while their opponents won 34. It was a harsh lesson in chemistry. It's a shame that it's our first time that we're playing together, Svitolina admitted after another victory. But I think it makes all the team work. But Eala was not defined by this loss. She was defined by what came after. And that's where the emotional truth emerges. The racket toss wasn't about anger.